The Discovery. Commander Zix of the Cytherian Exploration Fleet adjusted his environmental controls as the sleek vessel Nebula's Edge approached the outer rim of the Cyrian system. His scaled fingers danced across the holographic display, reviewing the sensor data that had brought them to this forgotten corner of space. The readings made no sense. "Commander," Science Officer Nith called from her station, her blue-tinged skin flickering with the bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep concentration among her people. "I'm confirming the energy signatures. There's definitely technological activity on Cyrian 7. Zix's vertical pupils narrowed as he studied the data. According to every database in the Galactic Alliance, Cyrian 7 was a death world. The planet suffered from perpetual electromagnetic storms that could fry any known technology within hours. The atmosphere was a toxic mixture of sulfur compounds and radioactive particles. Surface temperatures fluctuated between freezing and scorching within the same day cycle. No known species could survive there for more than a few standard hours, even with the most advanced protective equipment. "Run the scans again," Zix ordered, his deep voice carrying the authority of someone who had led successful expeditions to over 40 systems. "There must be some natural phenomenon we're not accounting for." Nith's tentacle-like appendages worked across her console with practiced efficiency. "Sir, I've run the scans 6 times. The readings are consistent. There are artificial structures on the surface, active energy generation, and..." She paused, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to show uncertainty. "Sir, I'm detecting biological signatures." "Biological signatures." Zix turned his attention fully to his science officer. "What kind of biological signatures?" "That's the impossible part, sir. They appear to be human." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems. Every member of the crew knew the history of human expansion into space. Humans were remarkable for their adaptability and determination, but they were also one of the most environmentally dependent species in the galaxy. They required very specific atmospheric conditions, temperature ranges, and radiation levels to survive. "Pull up the historical records for this system," Zix commanded. The main view screen filled with data scrolling in the flowing script of the Cytherian language. Nith translated for the benefit of the mixed crew. The last expedition to this system was conducted by the Terran Colonial Authority 53 years ago. A colony ship called the Endurance was reported missing in this sector. All hands presumed lost when they failed to reach their designated planet in the Kepler system. Zix felt a familiar stirring of curiosity that had driven him to become an explorer in the first place. The galaxy was full of mysteries, but finding humans alive on a world that should have killed them in hours ranked among the most intriguing puzzles he had ever encountered. "Set course for Cyrian 7, he ordered. "Maximum caution protocols. If humans have somehow managed to survive down there, we need to understand how." As the Nebula's Edge descended through the planet's turbulent atmosphere, the crew watched in fascination as the surface revealed itself through the swirling clouds of toxic gases. What they saw defied everything they thought they knew about planetary colonization. Sprawling across a valley protected by towering crystalline formations were structures that seemed to grow organically from the landscape itself. Dome-shaped buildings connected by enclosed walkways stretched for kilometers. Massive towers rose from the center of the settlement, their surfaces covered in what appeared to be cultivated growth that pulsed with its own light. Energy collectors of unfamiliar design captured the planet's perpetual lightning storms and channeled the power through crystalline conduits that resembled the planet's natural formations. "Commander," Nith whispered, "the settlement is enormous. I'm reading populations in the thousands." "How is this possible?" Zix muttered to himself, but his science officer heard him. "Sir, I think we're about to find out. I'm receiving a communication signal." The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face. The man appeared to be in his 50s, with weathered features and eyes that held the kind of depth that came from years of facing impossible challenges. His skin had an unusual pallor, almost translucent, with visible veining that seemed to carry a faint luminescence. "Cytherian vessel," This is Marcus Chen, administrator of Haven Colony. We've been tracking your approach since you entered our system. Permission to come aboard and make formal contact. Zix exchanged glances with his crew. The human's appearance was definitely altered from baseline, but his manner was calm and confident. More importantly, he was alive and apparently thriving on a world that should have killed him decades ago. Administrator Chen, Zix replied. I am Commander Zix of the Kitharian Exploration Fleet. We would be honored to meet with you. However, I must ask, how are you able to survive in this environment? Marcus Chen's smile revealed teeth that had a slightly different structure than baseline humans, adapted for processing different types of nutrients. Commander, that's a long story. One I think you'll find very interesting. Would you prefer to meet on your ship, or would you like to see what we've built down here? Zix looked at his science officer, who was practically vibrating with excitement at the prospect of studying this impossible colony. We would be very interested in seeing your settlement, Administrator. What precautions should we take? None, Commander. Our atmospheric processors will make the air breathable for you within our city limits. As for the storms, our shields will protect your shuttle. We've learned to work with Sirian 7's unique properties rather than fighting against them. An hour later, Zix found himself walking through corridors that challenged everything he thought he knew about human engineering. The walls were not constructed from typical building materials, but seemed to be grown from the planet's native crystal formations. Bioluminescent organisms provided gentle lighting that shifted and pulsed in harmony with the settlement's power grid. Marcus Chen walked beside them, moving with a fluid grace that seemed perfectly adapted to the planet's lower gravity. Behind him walked Dr. Sarah Rodriguez, the colony's chief scientist, whose modified respiratory system allowed her to speak normally in the processed atmosphere that still contained trace amounts of the planet's toxic gases. When the Endurance crashed here 53 years ago, Marcus explained as they walked, we had 12,000 colonists and supplies for establishing a standard agricultural colony on a garden world. Instead, we found ourselves on a planet that was actively trying to kill us. They entered a vast chamber where human children played an atmosphere that would have been lethal to their ancestors. The children's movements were quick and precise, their reflexes enhanced for the planet's unique conditions. Their eyes were larger than baseline humans, adapted for the lower light conditions, and their skin carried the same luminescent quality that Zix had noticed in the adults. The first year, we lost 3,000 people. Dr. Rodriguez continued the story, her voice carrying the weight of those losses. But humans are remarkably adaptable. Those who survived the initial exposure began showing beneficial mutations. We didn't fight the changes. We encouraged them. Zix watched in fascination as they passed through laboratories where human scientists worked alongside crystalline organisms that seemed to be part of the planet's native ecosystem. You formed a symbiotic relationship with the native life forms. More than that, Marcus replied. We've learned to communicate with them. They help us process the toxic atmosphere, and in return, we provide them with electrical energy from the storms. It's a partnership that benefits everyone. They climbed to an observation deck that looked out over the full expanse of the colony. The sight was breathtaking. Terraced gardens grew crops that had been genetically modified to thrive in the planet's harsh chemistry. Humans in environmental suits that seemed more like second skins worked alongside mechanical systems that harvested energy from the perpetual storms. Children swam in pools filled with liquid that would have dissolved baseline human tissue, their modified physiology turning the planet's dangers into resources. Commander, Dr. Rodriguez said, noting his amazement, what you're seeing is 50 years of human determination. We didn't just survive Sirian 7. We made it our home. Zix realized that everything he thought he knew about human limitations had just been shattered. These people hadn't just adapted to an impossible environment. They had thrived in it, created a sustainable civilization, and somehow maintained their essential humanity while becoming something new. Administrator Chen, he said slowly, I believe your colony may change how the galaxy views human potential. Marcus Chen's luminescent smile widened. Commander, we're just getting started. Would you like to hear the full story of how we built all this? The adaptation. Dr. Sarah Rodriguez led the Cytherian delegation deeper into the colony's heart, where the walls themselves told the story of human adaptation and survival. Embedded in the crystalline corridors were holographic displays showing the colony's history, from the desperate early days to their current thriving civilization. The endurance wasn't supposed to be here, Sarah began, her modified vocal cords producing harmonics that resonated with the crystal walls, somehow enhancing her words with emotional undertones. We were headed for Kepler 442's, a garden world with Earth-like conditions. But our navigation system failed during a solar storm, and we were pulled into Xerion 7's gravity well. The first hologram showed the massive colony ship, its hull cracked and burning as it crashed into the crystalline valley that would later become their home. Zix could see the terror and desperation in the faces of the survivors as they emerged from the wreckage into an environment that was actively hostile to their existence. Captain Maria Santos made the decision that saved us all. Marcus continued, pointing to a woman whose image appeared in the display. Instead of trying to repair the ship and leave, she ordered us to dig in and adapt. Xerion 7 is our home now, she said. We make it work, or we die trying. Nith studied the data streams flowing alongside the visual displays. The atmospheric readings from that time show toxicity levels that should have killed any human within hours. How did anyone survive the first few days? Sarah's bioluminescent veining pulsed brighter, a sign of emotional intensity that the modified humans had developed. We lost so many in those first weeks. The children were especially vulnerable, but some of us began showing resistance. Minor genetic variations that had never mattered on Earth became the difference between life and death here. They entered a memorial chamber where the names of the lost were carved into living crystal that grew slowly, adding new formations each year. The walls hummed with a low frequency that Zix recognized as a form of structured sound communication, though he couldn't understand the patterns. The crystal formations you see throughout our city aren't just decorative, Marcus explained, running his hand along a wall that responded with gentle light. They're alive. The planet's native organisms communicate through harmonic vibrations. Dr. Rodriguez was the first to realize we could learn their language. It took me 3 years to make first contact, Sarah admitted, leading them to a laboratory where crystals of various sizes grew in carefully maintained environments. The organisms are incredibly intelligent, but their thought processes operate on completely different timescales than ours. A single conversation might take weeks to complete. Zix watched as Sarah approached one of the larger crystal formations and began producing a series of complex vocal patterns. The crystal responded with its own harmonics, and gradually other crystals throughout the lab joined in what could only be described as a conversation. "What are you discussing?" Nith asked, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. "I'm introducing you," Sarah replied with a smile. "They're very curious about visitors from other worlds. They want to know if all Cytherian scales change color with emotion, or if that's unique to you, Nith." Nith's skin flickered through several surprised color changes before settling on an embarrassed purple. "They can sense my emotional states. They're empathic to some degree," Marcus explained. "It's one of the reasons our partnership works so well. They help us process the toxic atmosphere because they understand our need to survive. In return, we provide them with electrical energy and protection from the planet's more dangerous weather patterns." They moved through sections of the colony that showcased 50 years of innovation born from necessity. Humans had learned to cultivate plants that thrived in the toxic soil, their roots forming symbiotic relationships with the crystal organisms. Water treatment facilities processed the planet's acid rain into pure drinking water, while extracting useful minerals for construction. The real breakthrough came in year 7. Sarah continued as they entered a genetics laboratory that would have impressed scientists on the most advanced worlds. We realized that fighting the planet's effects on our biology was futile. Instead, we began guiding the changes. The display showed the gradual transformation of the human colonists over 5 decades. Enhanced lung capacity for processing the modified atmosphere, improved radiation resistance, modified digestive systems that could extract nutrition from the planet's unique food sources. Most remarkably, the development of limited photosynthetic capability that allowed humans to supplement their nutrition directly from the filtered sunlight. Each generation has been more adapted than the last, Marcus said, watching his own grandchildren play in a garden where the very air would have been lethal to their great-grandparents. But we've been careful to maintain what makes us human: our values, our creativity, our determination to not just survive but thrive. Zix was beginning to understand the magnitude of what he was witnessing. Administrator, your colony hasn't just survived on an impossible world. You've created an entirely new branch of human evolution. More than that, Sarah added, pulling up displays that showed the colony's latest projects. We've learned to terraform on a completely different scale, not changing the planet to suit us, but changing ourselves to become part of the planet's ecosystem. The final stop on their tour was the colony's newest achievement, a communication array that stretched high into the planet's turbulent atmosphere. The structure was a marvel of biological and technological integration, with crystal organisms forming living components of the transmission system. We've been in contact with Earth for the past 5 years, Marcus revealed. Very limited contact, due to the distances involved and the unique transmission requirements. But Earth knows we're alive. What was their response? Zix asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Disbelief initially. Sarah laughed, the sound creating harmonics that resonated through the crystal structures around them. Then excitement. Then concern about whether we're still fully human. The philosophical implications have caused quite a debate. Nith studied the communication logs that Sarah shared with them. According to this data, you've been sharing your adaptation techniques with other human colonies facing environmental challenges. That's correct, Marcus confirmed. 3 other colonies have successfully implemented modified versions of our biological adaptation protocols. Humans throughout the galaxy are beginning to realize that adaptation doesn't mean losing their humanity. It means expanding what humanity can become. As the day concluded, and the Cytherian delegation prepared to return to their ship, Zix found himself fundamentally changed by what he had witnessed. The humans of Haven Colony had not just survived the impossible, they had redefined what was possible. Administrator Chen, Zix said as they stood in the shuttle bay, watching the eternal lightning storms that now seemed like a celebration rather than a threat. Your colony will change how every species in the galaxy thinks about environmental adaptation and survival. Marcus Chen's luminescent smile carried the warmth of human determination that had built a thriving civilization from the wreckage of disaster. Commander, we hope so. The universe is full of worlds that seem impossible to colonize. But if there's one thing humans have always been good at, it's proving that impossible is just another word for not yet figured out. As the nebula's edge departed, Sirian 7, Zix knew that his report would reshape galactic understanding of human potential. The humans of Haven Colony had shown that adaptation and evolution weren't just possible. They were the keys to unlocking the galaxy's most challenging environments. But more than that, they had proven that human determination, creativity, and refusal to accept defeat could transform even the most hostile world into a home. The implications for galactic civilization were staggering, and Zix realized that this discovery was just the beginning of a new chapter in the relationship between humans and the wider galaxy. The children playing in toxic atmospheres, the scientists communicating with crystalline life forms, the engineers who had turned deadly storms into power sources. They were all proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their absolute refusal to give up, no matter how impossible the odds appeared to be. And that, Zix thought as Sirian 7 disappeared behind them, was perhaps the most alien and remarkable thing of all.